Hello everyone, welcome to the first controversial top 5 we have. Today we have the top 5 worst cars in Asphalt 8. And a lot of you guys are going to get triggered over my selections, but please be aware that I did not pick this based on any grudges I hold against these cars, but I'm rather evaluating their statistics in the game. So with that, let's get into our top 5. We have a bunch of cars on the list today. Coming in at number 5, we have the Bugatti Veyron. Now, a lot of you guys are going to really hate me for this, but this car is really bad in Asphalt 8. It's a low tier S-Class car that back in Asphalt 7, it was so powerful, and now it is terrible. It has a massive fake speed, its acceleration is terrible, its top speed is terrible, and it has a very weird handling situation, because sometimes it understeers, and then sometimes it oversteers. It's really hard to make a decent lap with this. My recording, I crashed a few times because I have a hard time handling this car around corners because sometimes it drifts too much, sometimes it doesn't drift enough. It's very weird and it's not good at all, especially since it needs a lot of W16s to pro. Massive downside, not worth dumping your W16s into that car. And the only upside I give to it is it's cheap, but there's so many better cheap alternatives that you can get than this Bugatti. Coming in at number 4, we have the Subaru Alcador, or as I call it, the Pizza. This car, you guys know, is terrible in the game, again, but for a good reason. It can't accelerate at all. Its handling is really bad, because, you know, it can barely make it around corners. It will lose all its speed when you try to drift. I mean all of it. I may be able to get around these corners, but it loses all of its speed, and then it has to use its slow acceleration to pick up to speed again. And then also, I don't know, it's just, it doesn't feel right to drive. It feels like too stuck to the road, but then when you start drifting, you're just going in a straight line essentially. So with that, Subaru Alcador, it's the number 4 worst car in Asphalt. Coming in at number 3, we have the Ford GT. I really hate to put this car on a worst list, but let's be honest, the Ford GT got the shaft in this game. Big time. It was released back in the Chrysler update in 2014, and I honestly thought this was going to be like a $100 premium car, so I actually was able to win this car in its cup, but then I was disappointed at A, it's 50,000 credits, so it is very misleading. Do not buy this car as your first A-Class car, trust me on this one. It will be a nightmare. Its acceleration is terrible. Its nitro duration is terrible. You will not win a lot of races online in this car at all, especially if you're not upgraded. And speaking of upgrades, it is really expensive to upgrade, so I highly recommend staying away from this car because it's a waste of money for its upgrades. It's the lowest of the low in A-Class. Coming in at number 2, we have the Bentley Continental GT. Now, a lot of you guys are really gonna get pissed off because there's some people who really love the Bentley. I don't. I've never been a fan of the Bentley, but the reason I put it at number 2 is because it has a good nitro duration. But let's not forget about its awful acceleration, awful handling, awful top speed. It's an awful car, so it's really not fun to drive. I was never a fan of driving in an Asphalt. I was really reluctant to Max Pro it when I did. I don't even know why. I just had it Max Pro. And yeah, with that, that's our number 2 worst car. And now for some dishonorable mentions. It's no longer honorable mentions because these are the worst cars. The first dishonorable mention is the Lamborghini Countach. And the reason this is not in the main top 5 is because it's actually not too bad. It has terrible nitro duration, and it has bad acceleration and handling, but it's manageable, and it's not the worst. It's still bad, but it's not the worst. And then the other dishonorable mention in B-Class we have is the Maserati Gran Turismo. I actually had this as a mid-tier B-Class car back when I first started playing Asphalt, and it was not fun, because this car is it's just sluggish. It has bad nitro, bad acceleration. It's just not the right B-Class car you should be looking at. The upper tier Aston Martins are much better than this. And then finally, our last dishonorable mention is the Rough RT12. I know one specific person who's going to get angry at me, but this car has terrible acceleration and nitro duration. And it has a max per rank of 1679, the exact same as the Lucra L148. And which one's much better? The Lucra. So why would you take the RT12? Some may say it looks awesome, and yeah, I agree, it looks like a Porsche, it's awesome, but its stats are not. So I recommend staying away from this car and getting a McLaren P1 instead. So what could be worse than the Bentley Continental GT? The Aston Martin DB9. This car is the definition of hell. This car is so bad in every single factor. It has terrible acceleration, terrible nitro duration, terrible top speed for its rank, terrible everything. Every single aspect about this car is terrible. Except for the looks, but that's a different story in Asphalt. This car is basically bait. If you fall into this trap, you are screwed. There are so many better options than this car, like the Citroen Servolt. That is much better, and you'll be much happier with the Citroen Servolt than this DB9. Stay away from this car. It may be cheap, but do not invest your time in this car. And that concludes our top 5. Hopefully I'm not dead by tomorrow morning based on negative feedback I'm about to get from my selections on this list, but please be aware that, these are true. They're really not good cars. I would stay away from them, unless they get buffed in the next update, which highly doubt it. And with that, that's our first controversial one. Let me know if you want to see more controversial top 5s. And with that, thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys later.